The flashing patrol lights reflected across my mother's white porch, just as she finished watering the flower beds my late father had planted 30 years earlier. 2 police officers slowly walked toward her, while several HOA board members stood across the street, watching with satisfied expressions. Neighbors stepped outside, confused by the growing crowd. My 72-year-old mother looked frightened but remained calm, holding nothing more threatening than a green watering can. What began as an ordinary spring morning was about to become the most painful day of our family's life. None of us imagined that within 20 minutes, the truth would completely reverse everything the HOA believed they had accomplished. My name is Mason Calloway, and my mother, Eleanor Calloway, had lived in the same brick home for more than 4 decades. My parents purchased it long before many of the surrounding homes were built, raising 3 children there, while creating countless memories inside those familiar walls. After my father passed away, Mom refused to leave. She said every room reminded her of the life they built together. Every flower carried a memory, and every sunrise from the front porch helped her feel close to him. I visited almost every day after work, helping with repairs, groceries, and anything else she needed. The neighborhood had always been peaceful, until a newly elected HOA president named Vanessa Mercer decided that every homeowner should strictly follow her interpretation of the community rules. At first, the disagreement seemed minor. Vanessa complained about the height of my mother's flower beds, the color of her mailbox, and an old wooden bench that had belonged to my grandfather. Each time we received a notice, I carefully reviewed the HOA documents and discovered that none of the alleged violations actually existed within the governing rules. We politely responded with photographs, copies of the regulations, and respectful letters requesting clarification. Instead of resolving the misunderstandings, the notices became more frequent. It felt as though every effort to cooperate only encouraged another complaint. Things became worse after Mom replaced her aging front fence with one that matched county safety standards. The fence was installed legally, passed inspection, and complied with local regulations. Nevertheless, Vanessa insisted the design had not been approved by the HOA's architectural committee. We again provided permits, inspection reports, and written confirmation, showing approval was unnecessary for that particular repair under the community guidelines. None of it seemed to matter. Several neighbors quietly admitted they believed Vanessa had become more interested in winning arguments than solving problems. Many respected my mother because she had volunteered for local charities, baked meals for grieving families, and welcomed new residents with homemade pies for years. Watching someone treat her like a problem rather than a neighbor made many people uncomfortable, but few wanted to challenge the HOA leadership publicly. Everything changed on a bright Tuesday morning. Vanessa contacted local authorities claiming my mother had ignored repeated legal orders and was unlawfully occupying property that was supposedly under active HOA enforcement. By the time I received a phone call from a neighbor, 2 patrol cars had already arrived. I raced to the house as quickly as traffic allowed. When I arrived, I found my mother sitting quietly on the front porch, while officers respectfully reviewed paperwork provided by the HOA. To their credit, the officers remained patient and professional. They weren't interested in taking sides. They simply wanted accurate information. Unfortunately, the documents Vanessa presented painted a confusing picture that suggested ongoing legal violations requiring immediate action. Mom looked frightened, but she never raised her voice. She simply kept repeating that the home belonged to her. I hurried inside, knowing exactly where my father had always stored every important document. Years earlier, he had organized every deed, survey, mortgage release, title record, permit, and tax receipt into clearly labeled binders. He often joked that paperwork solved more problems than arguments ever could. At the time, I thought he was overly organized. That morning, I realized he had been preparing us for moments exactly like this. Within minutes, I returned carrying the original recorded deed, county property survey, title insurance documents, tax statements, and every permit related to recent improvements. The officers carefully compared those records against the HOA paperwork. One officer quietly contacted the county records office while another reviewed the legal descriptions line by line. The atmosphere changed almost. Immediately, every county record confirmed that Eleanor Calloway remained the lawful owner of the property. There were no outstanding court orders, no foreclosure proceedings, no ownership disputes, and absolutely nothing authorizing anyone to remove her from her own home. The misunderstanding became painfully clear. The HOA had mistaken internal violation. Notices for legal authority they simply did not possess. The officers respectfully explained the difference between HOA, administrative procedures, and actual court orders. They thanked my mother for her patience, returned every document, and assured her she had every right to remain in her home. Before leaving, they reminded everyone present that property ownership could only be challenged through proper legal processes supported by verified records. Across the street, neighbors who had quietly watched the entire scene began approaching my mother with kind words and reassuring smiles. Some helped replant flowers accidentally stepped on during the confusion. Others offered to stay with her for the afternoon until she felt comfortable again. Their compassion reminded me that one person's poor judgment never represents an entire community. Later that week, several HOA board members requested an emergency meeting after learning exactly what had happened. Many admitted they had relied entirely on Vanessa's interpretation of the situation, without independently reviewing the governing documents or county records. The board commissioned an outside legal review, which confirmed that the association had exceeded its authority by treating ordinary violation notices as though they carried judicial power. Vanessa resigned shortly. Afterward, the remaining board members delivered a written apology to my mother, acknowledging the unnecessary distress caused by the incident. They also introduced new procedures requiring every future enforcement action to be reviewed against official governing documents before being approved. Training sessions were organized to help future board members better understand the limits of HOA authority and the importance of respectful communication. For my mother, however, the greatest comfort came not from policies or paperwork, but from the kindness shown by the neighbors she had spent decades caring for, people she had once welcomed with casseroles, birthday cards, and garden vegetables, now returned that same kindness when she needed it most. They repaired damaged flower beds, repainted her porch railing, and organized a neighborhood picnic in her front yard simply to remind her that she was loved. One peaceful afternoon a few months later, I found Mom sitting on her porch once again, gently watering the same flowers my father had planted years earlier. Children rode bicycles down the street, neighbors waved as they passed, and the neighborhood finally felt peaceful again. Looking at her smile, I realized my father's greatest gift wasn't the house itself. It was the way he had prepared us to protect it, with honesty, patience, careful records, and unwavering dignity. Some moments test more than our courage. They test our ability to remain compassionate when others fail to show the same kindness. My mother never sought revenge. She simply wanted to live quietly in the home where she had built a lifetime of memories. In the end, truth restored her peace, neighbors restored her faith, and the home she loved remained exactly where it belonged, filled not with fear, but with hope, gratitude, and the enduring strength of family.